listening to the Pharmacy Podcast Network.
Welcome to Empowering Healthcare Decisions, a podcast series by phactMI. This is a 4-part series where we dive into the world of drug information from the pharmaceutical industry, exploring the roles, challenges, and the impact on quality information in healthcare. phactMI is a 501c6 corporation and is a collaboration of pharmaceutical company information leaders that are dedicated to supporting healthcare professionals.
Our host, Evelyn DeSantis, talks with medical information experts about the challenges of keeping up to date with drug info, consequences on misinformation in healthcare, and medical information as a resource, and the people behind this data from the pharmaceutical industry insiders.
Hey, this is Empowering Healthcare Decisions. This is a phactMI podcast series. My name is Todd Urey, founder of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, and I'm excited to say that phactMI has returned for a second series in collaboration. And if you don't know, phactMI is the pharma collaboration for transparent medical information team that we had on the podcast, talking about the rise of medical information creators. And many of those creators, lots of those creators are pharmacists. That's why I'm so glad that we're helping to get this information out. Dr. Evelyn Hermes DeSantis is a PharmD. She is our moderator today. And Evelyn and I have spent time together after the initial series to really talk about where are we going as pharmacists? Where are we going as medication authority and experts in so many different facets, specific states, pediatrics, specialty, the rise of our senior care, then the senior care geriatrics that's desperately needed throughout the nation with the rise of our population. But Evelyn, it is so good to be back and working this with you. I'm just excited that you're here again to lead us in this new series.
Thank you so much, Todd. I'm excited to be back as well. I think this is, a little different from where we started last time, but I think as we discuss, what information means to healthcare professionals. That is something I've always been passionate about in my various roles. I think this will be a really good series.
I agree. The medical science liaison and how many pharmacists are becoming the go-to source for those positions is very special. And we're going to explore in this series the daily lives of those professionals in those roles, their educational backgrounds, what their responsibilities are, and how they're going to impact other healthcare professionals and collaborators through specific treatments. And this really sets the stage to go in multiple directions. Evelyn, I'm turning it over to you so that you can introduce our guests, and I'm excited to get started.
Thank you so much, Todd. And this really is looking at not just where those medical science liaisons are, but really where they're going to be getting some of their information from, which is from those medical information professionals within the pharmaceutical industry. So I'm excited today that we are getting a chance to speak with some of our medical information specialists. We have Susan Norosky from Ipsen, Alicia Cadogan from Pfizer, and Joy Yi from Gilead.
Evelyn, I'm so excited that we have the opportunity to bring these guests together. Pharmacists educating pharmacists has been a core value of the Pharmacy Podcast Network for the last 15 years. Thank you so much for gathering this team up. I'm going to turn it over to you so we can dig into educational backgrounds and career paths.
Great. Well, thanks so very much, Todd. I guess really to start with, ladies, if you would like to just go through and briefly share your job title and a bit about your current role and responsibilities before we getting into the educational background, that would be wonderful. Susan, I'll throw it to you first.
Sure. Thank you, Evelyn. Again, my name is Susan Norosky. I'm a PharmD by training, and I am currently the Senior Director for Ipsen's U.S. Medical Information Team. I'm responsible for leading our U.S. Medical Information Team, which includes our frontline medical information call center and our medical information managers. Our team's main responsibility is to research and respond to unsolicited requests that we receive from healthcare providers, payers, patients, and caregivers.
Great. Thank you. Hey, Alicia.
Yeah, hi, folks. So I am Alicia Cadogan, and I'm the category lead for oncology in Pfizer Medical Information. And so what that means is that I lead the team that develops and maintains the scientific content on Pfizer's oncology products. And that's the content that's used to provide responses to questions that either HCPs, patients, payers, caregivers, whomever might have on Pfizer's portfolio of oncology products. So I'm a people manager. I've been a people manager for many years, and I really enjoy helping to develop careers.
Wonderful. And Joy, what about you?
Thanks, Evelyn. So I'm an associate director on Gilead Sciences Global Medical Information team. I focus on business innovation. And so what that means is that I'm really responsible for any new initiatives, new tools, new processes that helps our medical information team be more efficient or more innovative in the way we engage with our customers. So lately, I've been focusing a lot on executing on our omni-channel strategy. And a big part of that has been managing our medical information website and focusing on how our medical information content can meet our customers where they're consuming this information. I joke that in the next 5 years, I'm going to be trying to figure out how to get med info on the metaverse. So maybe like podcasts, we'll probably doing an update of this on the metaverse someday.
I love it. I love it. But Joy, how did you get there? How did you come to doing all of this with, from your educational background and your career path? What led you into medical information?
Yeah, so I graduated with my PharmD from University of the Pacific in Stockton, California. After graduation, I immediately started working for Walgreens. Unfortunately, I graduated in 2009, which was the Great Recession, so full-time work was kind of hard to come by. And so I made the transition to hospital pharmacy for about 4 years. After that time, I had been doing pharmacy practice for about 5 years. So I was itching to do something new. So I was able to get a contractor position in medical information at Gilead in 2014. And after 1.5 years, I was able to transition this to a full-time role. For the first 6 years, I worked as a medical information specialist for various therapeutic areas such as cardiovascular, HIV, and inflammation. And about 4 years ago, I made the transition to my current role, and I've been really enjoying gaining new experience and skills in operations and strategy.
That sounds really amazing. Alicia, how about you? How did you land in medical information?
I think I would call it luck. I'm originally from Queens, New York, and I went to pharmacy school at St. John's University back when there was a bachelor's degree in pharmacy. So that was my initial degree. And then during one of my clinical rotations, one of my preceptors talked about a PharmD program. And that's something that not many people were doing after a bachelor's degree, but I said, why not? I'll give it a chance. And so I went up to Albany, New York, and did a 2-year PharmD program at Albany. And it was wonderful. I loved it. I loved the clinical aspect of things. It was very different from my time working in retail as an intern. And after my PharmD, I had a keen interest in nephrology. And so I went out to Pittsburgh for 2 years to do a fellowship in clinical nephrology. So I spent years and years in the dialysis unit. And that was an incredible time too. I stayed on after my fellowship for 2 more years as an assistant professor. And while I was there, University of Pittsburgh School of Pharmacy was transitioning from a 5-year BS program to a 6-year PharmD program. So there was a lot going on in terms of transition of the profession in general, but it was an exciting time to be there. And that was around the time that I was getting married and figuring out where to live. And so I moved from the west side of Pennsylvania to the east side of Pennsylvania and was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life at that point, right? Career-wise, what did I want to do? Did I want to stay in academia or take a chance and do something different? And I guess at that point, being young, the answer was take a chance. And so I found an opportunity with a medical communications agency, which I wasn't even really sure what it was at the time, but taking a chance. There were very few pharmacists there. I was one of, I think, 3. And we worked on lots of different content for educational programs, sales launches, sales rep, like just all kinds of different information that got me involved in the pharmaceutical industry. because that's how I became aware of what was happening from a content side in the industry, which then pulled me into pharma, and I joined Wyeth and now Pfizer, and I've been there for almost 21 years now, all in medical information.
That is quite a path. I love it.
It's a journey. It was a journey.
And our journeys never seem to be straight lines. Now, Susan, I understand your path was a little bit different.
Yes. Thank you, Evelyn. So I knew that I wanted to be a pharmacist ever since I was 14. I volunteered in a hospital pharmacy while in high school. I then went to the University of the Sciences in Philadelphia, now known as St. Joe's University, Philadelphia College of Pharmacy, for the BS in pharmacy. And then while I was there, a lot of my friends were applying for the PharmD program, which was pretty new back many years ago. And I went for the PharmD, not knowing how I would be using that, but knowing that that was the future path for pharmacists. It wasn't until my rotations in pharmacy school when I met the Rutgers PharmD Fellows, where I was at Bristol Myers Squibb working in their medical information group for a 5-week rotation. This experience changed my career path for where I knew I could make a greater impact to help answer queries for all of the US patients and healthcare providers so they could make treatment-informed decisions from all over the US. Now, I've been in the pharmaceutical industry for 24 years. I started in medical information, but over the years, I did switch into a drug safety role. And sometimes people still tapped into my medical information experience, where I ended up doing a med-info / patient safety dual type of role. And more recently, I'm now just leading the medical information group at Ipsen. And I've been doing that for the past 6 years.
That's great. I love that we have, all of you kind of came through different paths. I think as I always dealt with students when I was a professor at Rutgers, so many times I was hearing that the only path to get into the industry was the fellowship program, like you did, Susan. And I think it's a great path. But I think Alicia and Joy, you totally have highlighted that there are other paths to get in. And I love that. So to start with, what was one of the biggest challenges you faced transitioning from, Joy, we'll start with you, transitioning from hospital community into the industry, especially as your role as a medical information professional?
Honestly, it was the transition into a corporate environment. For me, learning the science was the easy part. I had my pharmacy background plus my 5 years of pharmacy practice experience. So when answering questions from patients and from doctors, I was able to translate a lot of my previous experience and knowledge into the science part. But I think adapting and navigating to what I call the corporate jungle took a while getting used to. In traditional pharmacy practice, I never had to use Outlook for emails or schedule meetings. If I wanted to talk to my manager, I just would look out for her when she arrives and go talk to her. Plus, a lot of the tasks that we have in pharmacy practice is very short timelines. Like patient drops off a script, you have 15 minutes to fill the script, and it's usually go, go, go. But once I transitioned to the industry, I had to learn how to manage my time with multiple projects or tasks that had longer term timelines. And I don't know if anyone listening has ever seen those TikToks on corporate culture, but corporate language is a real thing. I remember being so lost in all my meetings in the first quarter where everyone was talking about not boiling the ocean, but let's get those little hanging fruit, but make sure you circle back and close the loop. It took a while getting used to, and I appreciate my colleagues who would answer all my questions after a meeting to help me make sense of what was happening. They don't really teach you these things in pharmacy school.
That is very true. And I think, and especially within the industry, and I think in, as you said, corporate culture in general, we also need to teach people all of the different acronyms. That's, I think, the thing that always kills me.
I remember writing down all the acronyms on the side of my notebook and then going to find a colleague and telling me okay, what is a MRF? which for those listening, it's a medical information request form. And a lot of the times medical information specialists use it to basically call it a question.
Alicia, how about you? About transitioning from faculty into the industry? What was that like?
Yeah, so that was an interesting shift because, well, I did have that stint in the middle for about 5 years being in the agency world. But I think in general, each of the big transitions that I've made, I think the most challenging thing has been just the simplicity of starting over. Like you get into a role, you're in a job, you're in a position, you're comfortable, you feel like you know what you're doing, and hopefully you feel like you're really good at it. But then another opportunity comes up, you're interviewing and you display all this confidence and you get hired. And then you walk into this new job and you essentially know nothing. And so, how do you get from that point of you hired this completely competent and confident person who's here and doesn't know how to find the restroom or how to open their email or how to do any of the things that they said they could be able to do because everything is so new? And so it's humbling. I just remember each of those big transitions have been a really humbling time for me, which has reminded me that, you really need to respect the people whose team you're joining because they're the ones that are going to help ease the path for you, right? So even if you're joining at a higher level than some of the people on the team, you still need those folks to help you along the way because you're really just starting over each time and you're going to need that support. So I think for me, that's probably the biggest. It's just the newness of the beginning and starting it from a place of not knowing anything.
Alicia, I think that's great advice because really when you think about it, no matter what that transition is, even as it goes from company to company, there are nuances and differences and that company culture and how we go ahead and boil the ocean, right? Right, Joy? I think it really does depend upon where you're at. Susan, what about you? I mean, you went from pharmacy school into a fellowship. So it must have, I'm sure people would think it must have been easy for you to then transition from where you did your fellowship into the newer company and anything else. How about you? What were some of the challenges that you faced transitioning from just even changing your mindset from being a fellow to now being a medical information professional?
Yeah, no, thank you, Evelyn. Actually, there is some truth to that. I have to admit, by doing the fellowship program, it was an easier transition especially because I did a fellowship focused in medical information, and that just solidified my understanding that I really wanted to pursue a career in medical information. So actually, I remember my first job was at J&J at Ortho Biotech. I think it's now called Janssen Biotech or J&J. But I remember at the time, the feedback I got on my interview was that they could just see I was so passionate. I was doing a lot of the relevant duties already as a fellow, and they could see that it was going to be very easy for me to transition within their team. But I have to admit, though, I feel fortunate that I had that rotation in industry, in order to open my eyes up to know that there were roles for pharmacists in the pharmaceutical industry. Back then, over 20 years ago, it wasn't as common for the pharmacy schools to promote industry fellowships. They were promoting us for more clinical residencies or to work in the hospital or retail setting. So it was not as straightforward back then, but I think now there's a lot more resources for anyone interested nowadays to apply for one.
It is interesting to see. I mean, I know actually we just did some research at phactMI and we saw about 50% of the schools actually in the curriculum talk about medical information as a resource and medical information as career options. Unfortunately, that also means 50% don't. So I still think we have some areas of outreach that we can tackle as we continue to go forward. I guess one of the last questions I have for you guys is, what would be your biggest piece of advice to someone who's interested in making a transition, whether it's from, the classroom, from schooling into a fellowship into the industry, or even somebody who's currently out in practice? whether it's in a community practice setting or a hospital or academic setting, what would that piece of advice be?
Well, piece of advice. I think what I would want to share is for people to focus on the things they can control, right? And really in this instance, there are two major things. It's the work you do, meaning how good are you, and how you do that work, which is your work ethic. Right. I think those are really the two things that are within our control. Just be the best at your job, whatever that job is, whether you just started and you're learning, asking all those questions, or whether you're getting ready to walk out the door. You still want to be the best you can and leave a good professional reputation. I think that when you do good work, it's going to be remembered, but your bad work will also remember, or your bad behavior will also be remembered. So make sure that the work you do and how you do it is really good. Be a good person in the workplace. And I know that everyone wants to get ahead, right? Everyone wants to be recognized. Everyone wants promotions. Like that's all part of the culture of working. But if the way someone is trying to get ahead is by stepping over those who are around them, that's going to be remembered. And so we have to make sure that our work ethic is one that's genuine and that is, fosters a culture of inclusivity and a culture where everyone can support each other and get ahead. Because after that, honestly, those things that you can control, I think the rest of it is really up to chance, right? So you may decide, I want to transition from retail or from hospital into medical information. And you search the job postings and you find one that really aligns with you and you apply and you get an interview. You may or may not get the job, right? You could do all the right things and you may get the job or you may not get the job. That piece of it is out of your control. But if you really want it, you try again, right? You try again. It may not happen the first time. It doesn't mean that it's not for you. Chances are it will eventually work out. But until then, I would say go back to where I started. Do the best job you can and be a good person in the workplace. And eventually it'll work out.
That's great advice. Joy, anything you'd want to add on to that?
Yeah, I also want to agree with Alicia. I remember the biggest piece of advice someone has given me in the last decade is that the best way to prepare for your next job is to do a really good job in your current job. So, I also wanted to say to let your network know that you're looking to make a transition and encouraging everyone that this could be beyond your pharmacy network. For me, my two big career transitions from community to hospital and then from hospital to industry, the two people who helped me make those transitions were not pharmacists. The first one was my aunt, who was a nurse and went down to the hospital pharmacy, gave them my resume and told me that they needed to hire me. So that's how I got my first hospital job. And then also my friend at church worked in facilities at Gilead. And so she was the one who made me certain connections at certain departments that I was able to get that contracting job. So I think just, for all the introverts out there, networking kind of is hard for me, but I think definitely letting your network know that you're looking to make that transition. You don't really know who or what people can do. So I think just letting it be known that you want to make a transition.
I love that, Joy. I love the fact that it wasn't pharmacists who got you into different pharmacy careers. I think that just highlights the importance of how interconnected we all are. Susan, how about you? Any advice for that transition or just even advice for looking for a fellowship?
Yeah, well, I definitely agree with Joy and Alicia. And just to touch a little bit more on the networking, I just want to offer some advice for new pharmacy student graduates. Speak to the current industry fellows, look up online, their names are in the brochures, reach out to them, connect with them on LinkedIn, ask questions, ask for them to get you in contact with other preceptors within that pharmaceutical industry that you're interested in. And look for mentors. These PharmD fellows, the current fellows could be mentors. I personally get random requests from pharmacy students because my name is in a lot of these fellowship brochures. And I do meet with Rutgers PharmD fellows. I am the program director with Northeastern PharmD Fellowship Program, but I do have other fellows from other programs not associated with these schools that will still reach out and network and look for mutual connections. They're very savvy looking on LinkedIn for mutual connections to connect that way. So I would definitely recommend that. I could see that those fellow colleagues are very motivated and very eager to get into the pharmaceutical industry. And I think that's a step up for them. If you're not able to get a fellowship right away, I would say that there are other opportunities by looking at the vendor side, knowing that many companies use vendors to support the pharmaceutical industry. I think there's a lot of valuable skills there that could transfer over to getting a role in the pharmaceutical industry.
That's great. And I think something that you mentioned, and as well as Alicia mentioned, that I think is so important to highlight is transferable skills. And whether those are skills, if you're working for a vendor or a contractor, or if you're in a hospital and you are on rounds and you are answering, or in a community setting and you're answering those questions, those are still transferable skills, especially to within medical information. The other thing I just wanted to give another shout out to is, you talk about fellowships. So this coming year, phactMI will be having another fellowship for medical information and executive leadership. It is going to be part of the Rutgers Industry Fellowship Program. So kind of a shout out on that level as well. But, I just wanted to thank you ladies so much for all of your insights and your advice. As we start to close out this podcast, I just wanted to review some of the key takeaways based upon our conversations, and really that we hit the objectives that we had laid out on the podcast. So I've been able to identify some roles and responsibilities of medical information and who they are within the pharmaceutical industry. We've discussed the educational and career backgrounds of 3 different medical information professionals. And we've listed some challenges that you guys have faced throughout those transitions. And I think, and also ways to overcome them. So I just really want to thank you guys so much for your time today. Alicia, Susan, Joy, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. This has been the second podcast in a series on the topic of empowering healthcare decisions. Our next podcast will be discussing accessing accurate drug information. Todd, I'm going to throw it back over to you. Any final comments on your side?
Oh, what a great time together. Just a shout out to our guests. Thank you so much for being part of this. This is special to us. Once again, building information for pharmacists by pharmacists, powered by phactMI. And remember, if you want to learn more about phactMI, please check us out at phactmi.org. That's phactmi.org. Evelyn, can't wait to hear from you next on our next episode.
Thank you so much, Todd. And ladies, thank you.
Thank you.